Hello and welcome. I'm Devin.
And I'm Darren.
And this is 10 Minute Tabletop News, where we cover the 3 biggest stories from tabletop from the past week in 10 minutes or less, so you can get back to creating characters, stacking dice, and playing the game. The first biggest news, everyone's talking about it.
Yeah.
We don't need to spend a lot of time on it because there's so much out there about it. But the D&D movie, of course, is doing great.
Yeah,
But
people love it.
Wizard of the Coast is having a lot of trouble with the fallout of the Creator Summit.
Yeah, I mean, this is their first foray into influencer events, and it does not seem like they did well or particularly knew what they were doing.
They've done, well, here's the thing. They have done some other influencer events. Maybe not like summits, because they did like D&D Live, which was really, really popular, and that was probably like one of the best ways they've done like a thing with influencers and their community. But the biggest issues that came out of this is they were really hoping to focus on like, hey, look, we got all this new VTT stuff coming out. We have some rules changing, but everyone was really focused on a few 3 big things. One, the accessibility of the new VTT.
Yeah.
It runs on the Unreal 5 engine.
Yeah, I mean, this is also, I think, a moment or an opportunity to maybe establish some goodwill and maybe forge better relationships with the creators. And it doesn't seem like they did that, because when the creators turned back questions to them, especially like things with this accessibility, they didn't really get an answer.
Yeah.
Like with this accessibility thing, it's like you need a pretty beefy system to run it. It's like if you're trying to do like a MacBook Air, just like running a simple game, it's not going to work for you, which means not everyone's going to be able to play it.
It's going to have probably low adoption because of the requirements for the VTT to run.
Yeah, exactly.
And past that, a lot of people were asking about what are they doing about diversity and inclusion in their hiring practices.
Just hit them with another politician run around. They're like, "We'll think about that and come back to maybe having an answer sometime in the near future."
Yeah, there was very few answers,
which doesn't instill a lot of confidence.
There's a little bit of criticism because their head of diversity, inclusion, equity didn't have a lot to say about it.
Yeah.
And so those are kind of the 2 big things. And then they came out and said that 1 D&D isn't a thing.
Oh yeah, that it's just going to be an expansion of 5th edition.
It's going to be a revision. It's not going to be 5.5. Yeah. It's going to be 6th edition. It's just going to be Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. And they said, 1 D&D was to mean like the VTT, D&D Beyond, and D&D all under the same roof. But that doesn't really make it. They're just walking back the idea of creating this new version of D&D. 1 D&D isn't a thing.
Maybe just trying to stick to what they already have instead of trying to go into new territory right now, which, who knows what that speaks to.
They're going to release a new player's guide, new Dungeon Master guide, and some of the things some of the changes that they're talking about making sound great.
Yeah.
But the way it's branding, the naming conventions, it's all very confusing.
Yeah, like why call it 1 D&D if it's just going to be an expansion of 5th edition?
They had some creators that were virtual, some in person.
Oh yeah,
and the virtual aspect apparently was complete trash.
Yeah, pretty poor. Like they couldn't even get involved or participate, which is like kind of step 1 if you're going to have creators.
Yeah, there was kind of a lack of agenda on some things, and if you're building, if you're doing a lot of this work and pushing in the virtual space, the expectation, if you're gonna at least be able to have like a good AV video.
Yeah,
and trust me, I get it.
They're like, "Hey guys, we have new virtual things on the horizon." What was that? I can't hear you. Right?
Yeah.
Actually, it's not really working.
So what we're seeing here is probably be low adoption of the VTT.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of work for Wizard of the Coast to still do. I mean, the movie is doing great, and that's fantastic.
Yeah.
I love the movie. You like the movie.
I mean, I'm seeing it today. I've been out of town for 2 weeks.
That's right. Okay, yeah. So, you let me know what you think, because you didn't have high hopes for it, but it turned out to be fantastic in my opinion.
I mean, everyone I know so far loves it, which speaks well to it. Yeah. So I'm going in with high expectations.
But again, we're in this really confusing space with Wizard of the Coast.
Yeah.
The movie's doing great. Everyone loves it. The movie's doing great. But also, there's a lot of unanswered questions, a lot of expectations that they're just not living up to.
They made it seem like they kind of spent this time as more of an advertisement to these creators instead of reestablishing that goodwill and forging those relationships, which is unfortunate, but, we'll see what they do with that.
But hopefully this is a learning experience, right? Yeah. We'll see what happens at the next Creator Summit. On to our next story, talking about, fantasy tabletop. Pathfinder, Paizo has just announced that they have 2 new video games coming out with BKOM Studios.
Yeah.
BKOM Studios.
They're heading to a new studio this time. Last time it was
Owlcat was
Yes.
Kingmaker and Wrath of the Righteous, I believe.
which was just a couple years ago,
Yeah.
but they're partnering them to do 2 new games, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And I don't think these are going to be kickstarted.
Yeah.
Owlcat were both kickstarted. Wrath of the Righteous did like $2 million on Kickstarter, but it seems this might be first party, no Kickstarter.
Yeah, got some good investors, perhaps. A lot of faith in the Pathfinder brand.
I
so-
think Pathfinder. Remember, they sold out like 8 months worth of hardcovers in a month, and so they're restocking soon. But it could be that there's some new interest in backing these games.
a new tabletop RPG coming up, but expanding their brand, making big deals. So good for them.
This is important because this is another like publisher that is making a video game.
Yeah.
Right. I'd be excited to see what happens if Hunters Entertainment or Free League or Cobalt Press get a video game. That would be amazing. So I'm excited to see if we're going to see more smaller publishers get video games. It's nothing new for Paizo because they've had a mobile game, they've had video game success, but I would love to see that kind of expand because it is another place to.
Yeah, I think we will. I think there's a need for people, especially in the gaming space, to feel a little bit more active and have a little more agency. And guys, RPG is a place to do it. So.
Yeah. And our last story, the ORC license is in a feedback stage.
So yeah, Devin, I'm going to need your help on this one because I think like a lot of people out there, I'm a little confused. Like I know what it is, but I don't know what it is. So why don't you give me a breakdown of like what the ORC license is?
So you remember when we talked about the OGL?
Yeah.
Right? The OGL is an open gaming license.
Right.
The ORC is similar to an open gaming license, except if I make a game, instead of having to go and have lawyers create an OGL for my game, if I want people to be able to create content off of it, I could actually just use the ORC instead.
Oh,
So it's kind of like something you could join and add your game to it. And then anyone who wants to make content around your game can. Now, they don't get the IP. So if I make a Star Wars game, right? And I put the ORC in it, people don't get access to this Star Wars IP, but they get access to use the type of rules and mechanics I've created to create their own games around it.
Yeah, one of the things they're talking about is it's actually not going to be like managed or supervised by one body.
Yeah, it's in a trust.
Yeah, so explain that a little bit.
So the idea is they say that bodies, people, companies can all be politicized. They can use it for their own gain. So the idea is this is incredibly irrevocable.
Yeah.
The moment you publish under the ORC, you can't take your game off the ORC. It's there forever.
Yeah.
No one can change the ORC. That's why they're doing a lot of feedback, is because they don't want to have it updated. Because when you update things, that means you can revoke, you can change. So the idea of it being perpetual means that once you commit to the ORC, you are in it.
And what do people think about that? Good, bad? How's that?
Most people love it. I mean, you have Alchemy RPG, Black Book Editions, Chaosium, Demiplane, the DM Lair, Epic Miniatures, Evil Genius Games, Fantasy Grounds, Forgotten Adventures Foundry, Gale Force 9, Goodman Games, Green Ronin, Cobalt Press. All people that are part of the ORC Alliance, which are people that are like, hey, we want to publish under this open gaming license.
Yeah, but some of the feedback has been that it's a little bit complicated
it's so that it's definitely like you're gonna have. We will post to Renfail, who did a nice overview of kind of like the quick Q&As, but it is going to take some deep analysis, and there's going to probably be a companion doc that kind of explains some of this information because it is highly technical, because they want it to be professional.
Yeah, well, it's like, which seems like it should be, but for the layman's terms can kind of be a little bit hard to understand, but it sounds like it kind of protects these creators and essentially being able to kind of copyright their own stuff.
Exactly. Well, it's not much as copyright, but it's like if I have a game rules and I want anyone to be able to use those game rules without taking my IP, this is the easiest. This will be the easiest way to do that.
Yeah.
And the gaming, community loves open licenses.
Yeah.
It fosters a lot of creation. That's really, really cool. But it's also like really hard to make your own license that doesn't allow people to infringe on your own intellectual property.
Right, because like at the heart of it all, it's still like a collaborative space. So this is really cool.
Yeah,
this is really, really cool. Get it a little bit more.
I know it's really important because this allows a lot of creators to have kind of like their own OGL of sorts.
Devin, you're educating me in real time.
Right, and it's great. It's just democratizing open licenses and open gaming. So it's fantastic. But hey, those are our 3 stories. Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate you listening in. And if you like the show and you want to support us, head over to our Patreon at patreon.com/Total Party Chill. And with that, we'll see you next week. Bye, y'all.